Okay, thank you. So I'm starting the session on the battery management system and ideation to implementation that relates to the how the battery packs are, how the BMS related to your battery pack are ideated. What are the things that you want in your lithium battery packs? What are the components and how do the selections are done for the different of the technologies and the components? And the later part of this session, I will be talking the security aspects of it. If anyone's mic is on, please mute it so that I don't have to mute it from here. Otherwise, you will not be able to talk to me later on. So just for the uh, benefit of the others, please keep your voice and the videos muted till the session is going on. After the session gets completed, we will have the question answer sessions, and then you are welcome to open your mics and ask me the questions. Thank you. And to the people who are attending for the first time and who don't know me, so just a brief introduction of mine. I'm Amit, and I head the technology and training division of Pragyatmika. I have been in this domain related to the semiconductors and the design and development of the IoT-based systems, the electric vehicle systems and all for the last 15 of years. And I have worked with the premium of organizations, as you heard of, it is the IIT Delhi or DRDO, thereafter IBM India. And then we have worked with this, then we have started these group of organizations where Pragyatmika is our training division. So Pragyatmika is there for the training and the consultancy of the enterprises and the institutions both. So we have the academic wing and we have the enterprises wing both, where we do the job of the consultancies, thereafter the trainings and in-house R&D we do have in the domain of the embedded systems, the IoT, embedded AI, electric vehicles, the automotive electronics, the medical electronics. All these are our core domains where we work with a variety of companies, and we are the authorized design partners with many of the semiconductor companies, namely the Microchip or ST, Renesas, all these places. And we develop the different of the solutions for the industry, and later on companies do manufacturing based on our technologies. So in the electric vehicle domain also, we have been now working in the last 7 years where we have developed all these electronics technologies and the electrical technologies related to it and delivering it to the customers. And our training wing is specifically being drawn for training, where we give you the state of the art technology training through the online means as of now after the COVID, but we have the offline centers also running once the situations will normalize, so you can avail our offline centers also. But right now the trainings are online through the online remote hardware access modes. And we have the support for the industries, the government bodies, the startups, MSMEs, all the places. We are the authorized training consultant with the MSME, Ministry of Small and Medium Scale Enterprises also. And we support the startups for the bringing up the technology up to the POC levels and the manufacturing levels. For the academics, we have the lab setups, facilities, the training facilities and all such. So this is a brief of a profile. Now coming to the main topic of the BMS. So lithium ion battery packs are now leveraging all of the industry domains, whether it is your mobility, whether it is the IoT domain, and whether it is your storage applications, whether it is your grid connected applications. So all of these places, the portability is a very much required, and the more of a power. So in a smaller of a space, the more power, that's the most of the required thing is. And lithium ion is suitable for all of these places. And wherever we have the lithium ions, so there is a requirement of a complete management systems for the battery packs, and where this role of the BMS comes in. I am specifically focusing on the lithium ion because in the lithium ions, specifically the BMS is used, but it is not only the lithium ion only using the BMS, but all of the batteries. If you want to use the batteries in a specific of the manner, you need a management system for that. But what the thing is that due to the nature of the chemistries, and the usability applications, lithium ion requires necessarily the management systems. And that's why largely we talk about the BMS for the lithium ions, but we can have the BMS for the lead acid and the NiCad cells also. So, but this session is more towards the lithium ion side because that is the most usability, that's had the most usability and the applications. So any of the application domain, whether it is your mobility applications or your industrial applications, whether it is your cell towers or it is the storage applications, the BMS is a most of a required thing because you need to give the protections for your battery packs which you have connected, and you want to use effectively the energy which is available to you so that in the minimum of the charging or in the minimum of the cost, you can get the maximum of the energy output. And once you have this kind of a consideration and your cells are also of a costlier nature, then you would definitely want a kind of a electronic system, which is the management system actually, which will keep care of the protection and the management for your battery packs. And that's where this BMS application comes in. So whether it is your single cell application or a multi-cell battery pack or a traction battery pack with a multiple of a battery packs, all these places having the irrespective of the architecture of your battery packs, this BMS is applicable. The relevance of the BMS comes in the form of the in the form of the channels, like how many number of series of battery packs that your BMS can control. Thereafter, what are the voltages of your battery packs? Thereafter, what are the current limits and the balancing capacities? So these things are the relevant factors for your BMS is. And here in the image that you can see that for the different of the applications, there are the different channel requirements are. So these channels are basically the number of series of cells in the pack. Like for an example, if it is a mobility application where we are having the battery packs of in the range of 36 volt or a 48 volt or 60 volt, 72 volt, such kind of battery packs that we have. And the unit voltage of a series of a lithium ion cell is, if it is an NMC chemistry, so it is a 3.67 volt that we have, 3.67 volt. So around like 15 series or maybe the 12 series battery packs, such kind of battery packs that will be used for our automotive applications. For energy storage applications, the lower voltages might be required, the 12 volt or 24 volt battery packs that could be required where we have the less of channel counts. So depending on the application, we will have the different of the voltage levels of the battery pack. And for achieving the different of the voltages, we will have the different series. Like if I have to make a 36 volt battery pack, so 10 series of the battery pack. In the battery pack, there will be 10 series, 10S battery pack it will be. So we will have to select the BMS, which will be managing the battery pack of a 10 series. So that's what the relevance comes in. And if I go by the data, the distribution of the BMS for the application wise, so the most of the data for the most of the application of the BMS comes into the automotive domain for the cars and the buses. And the industrial and the medical side has only 1% because we have the single cell applications over here. In the industrial and the medical applications, we have generally the battery pack, which is of a single cell that is ranging in the 3.7 volts or maybe the even lower voltages. So there the specific BMSs are not getting used. In your application circuitries, the protection circuits are being made, and there is a no specific requirement remains of a separate BMS. So that's why the percentages are lower, but that doesn't mean that there is a not use the BMS in the industrial and medical domain, but it is the anywhere the cell is there will be the protection circuit. If it is a larger battery pack, you will have the separate protection circuit and the management circuit, that is the BMS, which will be assembled on your battery packs. If it is a single cell or a dual cell applications where you have only the very limited of a voltage, like 3 volts or 6 volts or 5 volts, there in your application circuitry, you can integrate the BMS circuit also. So that's how it is there. So we see that there is the increasing uses, but if one asks that what is your BMS system is, so the primary job of your BMS is to give the protection to your lithium ion battery packs. So to keep your lithium ion battery packs within their safe operating range, that's the most important factor for your BMS is. That's the most important job of your BMS is. And that safe operating range relates to the SOC levels of your battery pack, thereafter the temperature levels, the discharge of the currents, the charging levels, all these things. And to work in that, to make it into the safe operating area, the BMS has to do different jobs, and these jobs relate to these 4 of the activities, which is the measurement. That measurement relates to the voltage, current, and the temperature, the 3 basic characteristics of your battery packs. Thereafter, the balancing. So we have the multiple cells connected in our battery pack, and these are the physical cells connected. So what happens, that load is connected on these cells. So we have a series or parallel connections of these cells, and the load is connected through this battery pack. So it might be possible that on one of the cell might be the physical property will be little lesser, so that will get discharged faster than this. So might be possible that the discharge rate of this and this battery pack will be not exactly same. Theoretically, we think that both of the cell will be charging and discharging at the same of the level, but physically it doesn't remain possible. There is a slight of a difference that remains, or approximately of a 1 to 2.5% of the differences we see physically. So BMS, and what happens that if this difference becomes larger and we don't consider about it, so over a time period, this reduces the complete capacity of your battery, because in the battery pack, the weakest link nature goes on. So to avoid such kind of a scenario, we have to always keep the cells in a balanced mode. So both of the cells or all of the cells which is connected in your battery pack should be evenly charging and discharging. That's what the balancing nature that we have to keep. And for that purpose, this BMS does a role for the cell balancing. So that's the second job of your BMS, is to keep the balancing of your cells. Thereafter, it is the data that you require more of the times, like your battery pack is connected in the vehicle, and you want to know that what is the exact SOC levels of your battery pack. You want to update to your rider that how many kilometers he can go with the available energy. Thereafter, in how much amount of a time, if he is going at the 25 kmph rate, in how much amount of a time his battery pack will last. Thereafter, what are the charging levels that your battery pack has remained? What is the discharging rates? So the behavior of the battery pack that you want to gather. So for this purpose, the BMS is also providing you a way where you can make the BMS as a data collector. So that's the secondary job of BMS becomes. But again, it is happening through the measurement way. So the BMS does the data provisions also. And in the case of the data provisions, the data integrity and the security is a very much important thing is. And because if it is the wired connection also, so EMI is a very important role over here. Your vehicle will be encountering many of the radio zones. It might go under the very high of the voltage zones. It might be possible that you are having a traction battery pack in your vehicle, like in a four-wheeler application, where high voltages are there, and proper isolations if you don't have provided. So your data integrity will be disturbed, and you will not be able to get the proper of the data of your battery packs through your BMS to your vehicle system. So that's what EMI immunity is a very important factor wherever you are selecting any of the BMS. And then the BMS has to be compliant such of some of the safety standards. Those are the automotive safety standards and the functional safety standards. So these are the 4 factors that the BMS relates to, and the job of the complete management of the battery pack is done by these 4 of the four of these components. So a basic architecture of your BMS is something like this, where we have the BMS ICs. These are called the BMS front-end ICs. So we have the, if it is a like a traction battery pack of a 0 to 355 volt or a 400 volt battery pack, this is for your 4-wheeler application. So in this, we have the multiple of battery packs. So your traction battery pack is made up of multiple of the smaller sized battery packs like of a 36 volt or 48 volts. And then those battery packs are connected in a series so that they can make a complete of a 355 or 400 volt battery packs. And each of the battery pack will have a BMS connected. So this is the architecture that we follow, that where we have a top level BMS for your traction battery pack. Thereafter, inside this, we have the multiple of the battery packs connected. And with each of the battery pack, we have a BMS. So here in this example, we have a 12 series BMS that is connected. So if it is 12 series, means the battery packs, which is offered 12 into 3.7. So your voltage of the battery packs is this one. So we have, so in this, we have the BMS front end ICs, which does the job of the measurement and the balancing. And thereafter, we have the controller. So the BMS front end ICs are just taking the role of the measurements of your voltages, current, temperatures, all such parameters, VIT actually, that's what it is mentioned over here. And then if it is a larger battery pack, because the high voltage is there, your controller is working mostly on the 5 volts or a 3.3 volts levels. So you need to provide a isolation. So between your front end IC and the controller part, there is a hardware isolation is there. And then whatever the measurement that is being done, that is going through the data bus to your controllers, and the controllers does the job of processing of the data of your different of the banks. And if the it is the controller is calculating about the SOC and DOD and the different of the levels and the balancing states of the different of the series of the packs, and then it is communicating through its data port to your vehicle network. So this is how the architecture is designed. So main job of the measurement and the balancing remains with the BMS front-end chip, which has this architecture. So in this, we have actually the multiplexer, the ADC is there. ADC is used, and this ADC will be of a delta sigma nature, where it is the taking a reference. Generally, the battery ground is taken as the reference, and then the different of the series of the cells are measured over a time period. The measurements are used by this measurement IC for the balancing purpose also, whether it is an active balancing or a passive balancing, whatever the chipset is. So based on this, it will do the cell balancing also, and the data that will be gathered, it will be passed to the controller. The measurement and balancing IC, that's called the BMS front end, is also a small microcontroller, but that is a ASIC. The application specific it is, and you don't need to program it, but you can change the parameters of it through the means of a protocol that has been provided by the ASIC providers. So there are the different of the semiconductor companies who are providing these ASICs, and you can use those ASICs for the purpose of your balancing and the measurement purposes. So this is a basic architecture of your BMS remains. And whether it is a single cell architecture, whether it is the centralized architecture of your battery packs, or it is the distributed architecture of your battery packs, anything if you are using, the concept will remain the same for each of them. And you don't require to change whenever you are designing the BMS system for your complete of the battery pack, so you have to select the architecture which will be seamless addition of the battery packs also. Like for an example, if right now 10 battery packs are connected into this, and we have made a traction battery pack with this architecture. So once we are going to add more battery packs into it, like more voltages that we require, and we have added more battery packs into it. So in that condition also, the architecture should be that this thing should be replicated over here. It is not like that we have to change the complete of architecture and then add the new battery packs. So this thing is very much important while you are selecting the BMS for your battery pack. So the 4 of the parameters, that's the measurement, balancing, data, and safety. I will be talking about each of them one by one. So first it is the measurement. And whenever we talk about the measurement, it is the accuracy and the range of the measurement. That's the most important thing is. So we have the known chemistries as of now, like your LFP chemistries or NMC chemistries. Thereafter, the other chemistries, those are in pipeline, like silicon-based, lithium silicon-based batteries or hydrogen-based cells. Thereafter, it is the sodium-ion cells. So lots of new chemistries that you are hearing of. So whenever we are planning the BMS, so the more of the accuracies these new chemistries are in a requirement of, because just see just see the 2 of the things, the difference between the NMC and LFP. So in case of a NMC, we see that this is the graph of your NMC chemistry is where we have a slant of a curve. So if we are measuring the voltage and the current, so there is a slight of difference at each of the DOD levels that we will have in this NMC chemistry. But seamlessly, if we talk about the LFP chemistry, so you can see that almost the LFP curve remains flat from the 80% to 20% levels. There is a very small of a difference that is there in the very small of a changes that is there in the voltage of this LFP cells. So if you are given a task, if you are using a BMS, which doesn't have the very accurate measurements, and it is not able to predict the completely gas gauge about the voltages and the SOC levels of your battery pack, so you will not be able to predict that what is the exact SOC level of my battery pack is. Here in the case of the NMC, we have the complete of a curve. So by measuring the voltages with the measurement of the accurate range of the voltages, we can predict about the SOC levels. But similarly, in the case of the LFP, that is the LFP cells, so that you can see that very small of a changes that we have. So if you have to give customer the SOC levels, so how will you plan if you don't have the accurate measurements? So that's why this measurement accuracy is very much required, and newer battery packs might be the newer battery packs which are designed. So the voltage levels are getting increased, and secondly, it is being designed in such a way, the work is on in such a way for the newer battery packs that it will give the most of the output in it, most of the stable output that it is giving. So for that purpose, the accuracies for the accuracy measurement, accurate measurements of the voltages and the current, that's the very much required for these BMSs is. And once we are talking about the automotive grade BMS, so there is a one compliance is that's the ASIL-D, automotive safety automotive safety standards. So that's what the BMS has to be compliant of. Thereafter, the BMS is required to be of a single chip solution, like the previous of architecture, which I have shown you that the BMS front chip is separate and the controller part is separate. But if it is a centralized architecture we are following, then we would be preferring to have a same in the same package, the BMS front end and the controller both. We don't want a separate of a controller and the BMS front chip. So that's what the architecture is more supported. if you want to explore more about the single chip solution, so Renaissance has more of a single chip solutions, and you can explore about it. Other semiconductor companies are still providing the separate of our controllers and the separate of the BMS front end chips. Thereafter, once we are using the chipset solutions, so minimal of the external analog components that we will be requiring on the BMS chipsets, so that be a BMS PCB, so that due to the temperature drift and due to the environmental factors, our components won't be changing its states, and we will have the more of the measurement accuracies. Thereafter, related to the communication, so in the automotive batteries, so there are the communications are required for the vehicle network communication, and the standard communication for the vehicle network is the CAN, you must be knowing. So we can have, so what we are selecting, the trend is going towards more of protocol based communications, and whether it is a CAN or even now CAN is also getting omitted. It is the ISO SPI that is coming in. And then the wireless communications interfaces are also become increasingly popular. So the BMS has to be compliant with the wireless communications and the CAN based or ISO SPI based communications, rather than just plain serial communication over RS-232 or RS-485. So those are the trends that is going through the automotive batteries. And now I was talking about that what the impact of your measurement accuracy gives on the life of the battery pack. So here is a 3 use cases I have taken, and this is what you have to also consider whenever you are selecting any chipset for the design of your BMS, or just if you are going to make a battery pack and you are going to select a BMS. So you have to do some calculations related to the measurement of your voltage measurement of your BMS, and that will be very important factor related to the usable capacities of your battery pack. So 3 use cases that you can see here. So here I've taken a LFP battery pack, LiFePO4. The discharging is around maximum of up to 20%, and the discharging is minimum up to 20%, and maximum we are charging up to 90%. That's the usable energy, that's the 70%. As you know that for the lithium ion battery packs, we don't charge it up to 100% to make the life longer of your battery packs. So 20 to 90, that's the standard that we are keeping. Generally, we keep it up to 80% only, but here in this example, 20 to 90, I'm keeping you for the reference purpose. So if it is the no error in the voltage sensing, so that's the ideal condition. This is not practically feasible. So then it is the 70% of the usable energy that you can have from your battery pack. If it is a 5% of the error is there in your voltage sensing, so BMS has to sense the voltages of your battery packs and specifically the cells actually. So if there is a 5% error is in the voltage sensing, so our usable energy reduces to 60% only, because 5% error margin can lead to decrement of your charge level up to 85% only, and this thing can increase up to 25%. So in place of a 20, it is 25, and in place of a 90, it is your 85 becomes. So our usable energy becomes of a 60%. And if it is the 1% of a error only into the voltage sensing, so your usability increases up to 8%. So around of a 68% of a usable energy that you have in this case. So just 4% of the improvements in the error sensing, we can have the 8% of the capacity increment. So this is the 3 use cases I have taken for you. And very, very accurate measurements like analog devices, BMS chipsets or Renaissance BMS chipsets, they have around 1% of the errors. They error into the voltage sensing, but generic like Chinese or Taiwan based chipsets that you take for your BMS for your battery packs, So they have up to 20% of the error into the voltage sensing also. So you can easily think about that if it is a 20% of the error is there in the voltage sensing. So even if the energy is there in your battery packs, but you will not be able to use it because the BMS will tell you that due to the error that the voltage has been achieved. So neither of a good balancing you will be able to do of your battery pack, nor of the good capacity that you can utilize. So whenever you are selecting any of the BMS chipset for the front end, so you should be very, very compliant about, you should be very thoughtful about the how much error this sensing has. If it is a 1% of error, that's the best that you can achieve and can go ahead with it. So this 8% you can see over here, it seems to a very small figure, but this 8% can do wonders if you are talking about a big size battery packs. So this 8% can accurate measurement. This 8% due to the accurate measurement, this increment of the 8% into your SOC measurement can increases the runtime of your battery packs in the terms of the kilometers, or it will be reducing the cost and the weight of the battery pack also. So here is a brief calculation which has been done. So just for a 1 kilowatt hour battery pack, we are able to save up to 80 watt hours of the energy, the 8% of it. That's the for like a generic two-wheeler applications I'm talking about. So around 80 watt hour of energy that you are able to save, and in the weight around 5.5 kg. That's the weight that you can save on. That's if it is for a 10 kilowatt hour, like for a bike applications, you will be able to save around 5 kg, and that's a huge weight in terms of the for the automotive application. So impact is very high as we go increasing the size of the battery packs. The impact become very bigger due to the accurate measurement of the SOCs. So that's what you need to look at always. Now, how this accuracy is on which of the thing this accurate measurement of the voltage is dependent on. So what happens that this accurate measurement, there are the datasheet figures that you will get whenever you will be going to select any of the BMS front-end chip. So you will get the datasheet of it, and there are the particular numbers that you have been given. And based on those particular numbers, like for the measurements and for the drifting conditions, you will be selecting any of it. But in case of the BMS design, only remaining dependent on the datasheet numbers, always advisable. You have to be prepared for the worst case scenarios. What are those worst case scenarios? Are like you have made a PCB, BMS PCB, and then you are assembling the components over it. Those components are assembled through the machines or maybe through your hand soldering modes. So the temperature will be applied. So there are the temperature drifts that will be there. Due to the temperature, the properties of your components might change a little bit, and that will lead to the change into the reference voltage. So always the measurement is done against of a reference. You know that if you have worked on the analog to digital convergence modules in your electronics, so you must have the reference voltages in your ADC. That reference voltage is actually the known voltage against of which you do any kind of a measurement. Whether it is your 5 volt, the supply voltage remains, or it is another reference voltage that you are supplying to your circuit. Many of the times we do the measurement against of the ground also. So there are the many of the voltages selections that we can have in our circuit, and those reference voltages are the known and remain stable throughout the time period due to the even due to the temperature or the current or the voltage conditions. And then we can have the accurate measurements. What if the reference voltage is changing over a time period? Then definitely we will have the errors into the measurement. So these are the factors that you can see over here. So it is due to the temperatures, the noise, the tolerance, Thereafter, the stress during the PCB assembly. So if the machining process is happening, there are the components are getting assembled through the stress process. So these are the factors which affect the quality of your components. And that's the practical scenario is it will be happening always. So these things are changing the references. So whatever you have planned as per your datasheet conditions, there might be slight of the differences, and that slight of differences can lead to the errors in the accuracy of the measurement. That's what the figure was given, that 1% or 5%. So that's why I have told you that this no error into the voltage sensing is almost impossible. That's the datasheet figure is. Generally of a 1% error is acceptable one. But if you are going beyond, so then it is the sum of the problems into your chipset or into your process. So you should be very thoughtful about it, remain. So these are the figures, and here two of the methods I am just discussing it with you because these are the two very common methods that has been used for the BMS references, and which one is better actually. So there are the lots of referencing methods are there in the electronics. I'm not going to detail into that, but the two, that's the band gap reference method and the Jenner reference method. So in the case of the band gap reference method, this is dependent, this circuitry is made, as you can see, made up of the BJTs actually, bipolar junctions, transistors, and there is a lot of temperature. There is the BJTs are drifting lot based on the temperature and the stress conditions. So your band gap reference generally is a good. If you will go in a general of electronics, the band gap reference method is a good because you can have the multiple of the references that we can take out of it due to the BJTs, and the very, very small of a power or the voltage that it requires. So generally it is considered good, but due to the temperatures and the stress conditions, the band doesn't remain usable for our BMS applications much because of the drifting. So what I would be suggesting that whenever you are going to select your BMS front-end chipset, so you should have the Jenner reference methods. So that because the Jenners don't drift much based on the temperature, they have the fixed output voltage, and the shortcoming is that they require a specific voltage levels like 5-volt levels or 7-volt levels minimum they will require, and only one or at most two of the references that you can get from the Jenner reference methods. But still, due to the accuracy and the measurements relevances, the Jenner reference method always remain better. So that's why the BMS chipset which you are selecting, that should have the Jenner reference method. And for the comparisons, you can see that initially the initial accuracies, thereafter after the board assembly or after 10 years of operations, you can see in the red we have the measurements done through the band gap method. So it is drifting much. There is a lots of drift is there into the measurements. So maybe whatever you have planned in the initial years of the production for your the figures which you have planned in the initial years of your production of your BMS front end, that will be drifted by almost 2.5%, 2.5 times. Whereas if it is the Jenner reference methods, so there is a very small of a drift is there. It is not like that there will be no drift. There will be very small of a drift and very less of a shift into the accuracy that you will have if it is the Jenner reference method that you are having. So, and nowadays almost the good BMS front-end chips are having the Jenner reference methods for your BMS applications. So these are the factors that affect the accuracy of your measurement of the voltage, current, or the temperature. All of these are measured through your ADC, and that drift is not permissible at all. So that's what the thing is that I wanted to discuss. Thereafter, the cell balancing part. So the BMS also has the job of the balancing. What happens that once we are making the battery packs, so we have a complete of a cell sorting process, and during the cell sorting process, we take care of the internal resistances and the discharge characteristics of the lithium ion cells. And once we are taking care of those characteristics, so theoretically we remain very sure that whatever the cells that we are going to use in our battery packs will be behaving similar ways what during the charging and the discharging process. But what happens that over a time period of the uses, the cells are the physical things. Maybe one of the cell is losing its properties. It is discharging faster compared to the other cells. Or it might be possible that some of the cells have got sorted. So all these things are affecting the performance of your battery pack, because if one of the cell is discharging faster compared to the others, so that cell will come to the lower level faster than others, and the BMS will measure the lower of the voltage of that particular cell and can cut off the output of the battery pack, even the other cells remain have the capacity. So that's why this thing is very important, that all the cells remain should be of a same of the SOC levels. So the SOC mismatch should not happen. So there are the two factors of it. One is the physical aspects that I have talked about, the physical properties of the cell, and the loading of the cells. So you have a load, the cells are loaded because your battery pack is connected with the load, and those loads are coming directly on the cells. So if any of the cell is given the higher of the load, so definitely it will be discharged faster. So BMS has to take care of the even distribution of the load and the charging both, so that the SOC should not mismatch. And if any of the cell is discharging faster, or maybe any of the cell is charging faster compared to the others, so the BMS has the job of the balancing. So this balancing is either active balancing or a passive balancing remains. So in the case of active balancing, the balancing is done when the cell is getting charged or discharged, whereas the passive balancing is done just after the charging process. I will be talking to you, but here just before of that, the active and the passive balancing. Just example over here that we have a battery pack of this 3.75 volts, and the battery packs are of 5.5 Ah of a capacities, total of 80 cells that we have, and 60% of the usable capacity that we are using, means we are charging it between the 20 to 80%. That's the best standard limit that has been used. So with this battery pack, with this configuration of the cells, this battery pack is the usable capacity of your battery pack is 1 kWh. So here, like you can see, if it is, this is the theoretical condition, is that the battery pack is charged up to 38%. So once your SOC is charged up to the 38% of minus 20, sorry, plus 20, and then 22% of the space is empty. So total usable capacity of your this battery pack cell is 22% plus 38%, because this 22% that you can use and 38% is already in use. So total of a 60% of the usable capacity that you have. But if somehow this mismatch is happening, so what will happen in that case? Due to this mismatch, like in one of the cell is maybe overloaded, some 1 milliamps of a overloading of a current is there on this module X. So after 1500 hours of this operation, what happens that this SOC goes at 18%, and here the 12% of the empty space that we can utilize. So usable capacity becomes how much? Because the weakest link rule prevails once we are making the battery packs. So the lower of the SOC that is always been considered. So this 18% and this 12% that we can achieve. So So our usable capacity becomes of only 18% plus 20, that is the 30%, and it is 0.5 kWh. So due to this SOC mismatch, you can see that everything was okay, but due to this SOC mismatch, our battery pack has now become this 0.5 kWh after 1500 hours of the operation. So why it has happened, why this 50% of the degradation has happened? Because of the not even proper balancing of the cells. If we have kept the cells in the balancing mode, the BMS has done the perfect job of the balancing. So definitely this mismatch should not be happening, and the cells will remain usable for that. So I was talking about the active and the passive balancing. So in the case of the active balancings, so we have the multiple of the cells that is connected, and during the charging process, if any of the cell is like these are the two cells. So if one cell is getting overcharged, so here this cell is at this SOC level only, and it is getting some of the more charges. So during the charging process itself, the discharging will start happening from this cell, and the charge will getting transferred to it. So this is how it is, the active balancing is done. But there are the shortcomings in the case of the active balancing, is that there is the active balancing electronic circuitry is a little complex, and during the transmission process, the lots of heat is generated in the active balancing, and all the charges that we are not able to transfer. Whereas in case of a passive balancing, just after the charging gets completed, we have the multiple of the cells connected. Like this cell is at this cell has increased a little bit. So what will happen that just after the charging process gets completed, the discharging circuit will be applied, and this cell will remain at this stage only, whereas this cell through the discharging circuit will be discharged up to the level of this. So both of the cells will be at the same of SOC level down then. So this discharging circuit is within your SOC, the BMS front-end chipset, or if a larger size battery packs or a larger capacities or a higher of the current that you want to discharge your cells, so you can have the external discharge circuitries. So these are the two circuitries which I have mentioned over you. That's the internal discharge circuitries and the external discharge circuitry. In the case of the internal discharge circuitry, that is within your BMS front-end chipset, where you have the discharge. R discharge is the resistance through which it is discharging. And in case of external discharge circuitries, you can attach the external gate for it. Whereas in case of and for each of the bank of the cell, or I can say for each of the series of the cell, this discharge circuit remains applicable on. And this is the job of this is dependent on that complete voltage measurement accuracy, that how good the balancing will happen for your cell. Whereas in case of the active balancings, we have to attach a separate of a chipsets. Like for analog devices, we have a chipset LT8584, and the ferrite cores that you have to use across each of the modules. The current average of a current that you can have a higher in case of the, like in case of internal discharges, generally of 100 milliamps of a discharge that you can do. And if you want to increase more of a discharges, you want to generally it is not required. But if you want to increase the discharging current, so you can have the external discharge circuit for that purpose also. Whereas in case of active balancing, and specifically for the battery modules, we can have the higher of the currents, and then we can use these ferrite core transformers for this purpose. And then we have this LT8584 chipset, which is taking the job of the active balancing. Generally, the BMS front-end chips which you are using, which has been available from the multiple of the semiconductor companies, they generally have the passive balancings, and the BMSs which you are using also generally most of the BMSs are designed the passive balancing mode. There is a shortcoming that the sum of the charges that you have to waste, because what happens that during the passive balancing, I have charged all the cells up to the maximum of capacity levels. Like this cell is charged here, and once this was getting overcharged, I was not suppressing it. I had allowed for the charging process, and once it is got charged, then I'm discharging. So I'm wasting this part of the energy. So that's the shortcoming is in case of the passive balancing. But what happens that this circuitry, the internal the passive balancing circuitry is little smaller and can be implemented with the help of the BMS front-end chip itself, and don't require the specific of the algorithms also, and less of heat is generated into this compared to the active balancing. So that's why the BMS manufacturers prefer the passive balancings. But depending on your configurations, you can go for the active balancings also, where you have the battery stacks or the rack of the battery packs, or for it is the or like for the battery packs which will always be remain connected, like for the grid battery packs where the charging and discharging remains on a complete throughout process it remains. So there you can have the active balancings. But in case of automotive applications where you do the charging once in a 24-hour and then keep running the battery pack, so you can have the passive balancings also, because you don't want to increase the size of your BMS and the complexity of the electronics also. So depending on the applications, we select the mode of the balancings, but whether it is the active balancing or the passive balancing, both of the places, this measurement accuracy is more of an important factor. The SOC, this balance should not happen, and that's the job of the BMS role. That's the role of the BMS will always remain. Thereafter, it comes about the communication aspect. So those two things are the primary jobs I can take. That's the measurement and accurate measurement and the balancing. And the third is the secondary job. We take it as the communication part. So this communication is important for the two factors. Once, if it is a distributed architecture of your battery pack that you have, where you are daisy chaining your BMSs. Like I was talking that once we are making the traction battery packs, the lots of smaller sized battery packs are connected together, and then they are then the complete full size battery pack is designed out of it. So like if it is a 360 volt battery pack that we are going to make for our electric car, and to achieve this, we have 36 volt battery packs into 10 such battery packs we are having, 10 numbers. So all these 10 battery packs are having the separate BMS. And once these battery packs are connected in a series, so the BMSs will have to be daisy chained together to make a complete full-sized BMS for it. So that there will be a central BMS for this purpose. And through this central BMS, the multiple of BMSs are connected. So this is the distributed architecture that we follow for this purpose. So once we are daisy chaining this battery pack, so what are the communication there should be happening between each of these BMS, so that the effective SOC levels of each of the module and the states of the modules should be communicated to the central BMS. So for the protocols which is been used, like a CAN protocol that you can see, but CAN is very expensive protocol that is been used. So nowadays what is preferred in the BMS designs are the ISO SPI based designs. So it is the isolated SPI. So whatever the communication that we do in case of the automotive network is actually the isolated communication, even if it is the CAN or the serial bus communication that you are doing due to the EMI immunities. So ISO SPI that we prefer nowadays, and the BMS front ends have inbuilt the ISO SPI protocols with it, which we can use. It is a 2-wire protocol that we use. In case of CAN communications, which you can see more of the time, so for each of the chipsets, you will require a CAN transceiver. So the receiver and transmitter that you can implement separately. So that is increasing the cost of your packs, and thereafter the weight and the placements also, that is getting increased. And the more number of components is a risk for your BMS. So that's why it is a trend is now towards the implementation of a protocol which is there on the ASIC itself, and that could be used for the daisy chaining purpose. So, and this is also, this ISO SPI is also remain usable for the purpose of your wire breakage. That's what is the more important, because in case of the larger battery packs, we have a very large size, very large length of the wires going through the powertrain sides. So maybe some of them has broken up. So that thing also needs to be tracked. So the ISO SPI has that feature also. And it is the cheaper than your CAN protocols because it is already implemented inside the chipset. And the rate of communication could be up to 1 Mbps, 100 meters of a cable length that we can have in the ISO SPI. So this is the architecture that we follow, that you can see. So for the daisy chaining purpose, in the ASIC itself, we have this a protocol. We don't have to attach a CAN transceivers like this. So if you have implemented any vehicle network, you can see the relevance that how important this ISO SPI is in case of BMS communications. So this is a asynchronous pulses that is going, and you don't require, like in a generic SPI, it don't require the clock and the time references for its purpose. It is for the microcontroller, the implementation, it is simply like a SPI, but what happens that this ISO SPI is implemented into the ASIC. So first the ASICs are communicated directly through the ISO SPI protocol. And once the data that is being gathered by this central BMS, so this all the data that will come to the central BMS, this is again a front-end chip remains, and then it goes to the controller through which it goes to the vehicle network. So now it is up to us that between this front end and between your controller and the front end, which communication protocol we will implement, whether SPI, that ISO SPI, or the CAN. So nowadays you will find that most of the BMS which is available is implementing the CAN, even if on the lower of the side, the ISO SPI is implemented. On the top of the side with the controller and the vehicle network communication, the CAN protocol is implemented because of the standards of the CAN related to the vehicle network. In the automotive world, the CAN is more of a usage. So that's a choice of yours. But if you want to implement the SPI, you can also implement it, and it will remain cheaper because you don't have to implement the special of the transceivers for that purpose. So that's a choice, but here now it is a trend that between the for the daisy chaining purpose, the ISO SPI, and this ISO SPI is working on the twisted pair cables. So you don't require any specific cabling for this purpose. There is a no buffering, and thereafter the daisy chaining, there is a no theoretical limit to the number of devices in the daisy chaining. So as many number of the battery modules that you want to connect, you can connect on the daisy chain. Also, in the communication part, now the wireless trends are coming up. So what happens that once we are having the traction battery pack, there are lots of smaller battery modules are connected. And we have this ISO SPI protocol going through all the battery modules, but still there is a lot of wiring is happening. So if you want to avoid those wirings, we have the wireless BMSs also. So for this purpose, the smart mesh is used for this. The mesh protocol is used for the BMS, and this is it is still in the initial phase. A few of the vehicle models are started using the wireless BMS. So this is how it is implemented. You can see. So here, the differences that you can see in the case of the daisy chaining that you can see over here, that we have the multiple of the battery modules. They are daisy chained together, and then they are being sent to the main controller. So this main controller is having the CAN interface through which it will go to the vehicle network. And here I can have either I can have the CAN protocol or the ISO SPI protocol working. So this is a generic configuration of the interconnected CAN bus or the ISO SPI buses. So what happens that if in this architecture, if this BMS is, if this module is not working, maybe some of the, any of the error has occurred, or maybe the wiring has got disconnected over here. So what will happen? The complete of the communication will be in a peril because this is daisy chained together. So that's the one disadvantage this wiring network remains have. Whereas in case of a mesh networking that is implemented, that is for the wireless mesh that I'm talking about. So in the mesh, every node is connected through its adjacent nodes through the cross communications also. So even if one link is disconnected, like if this link is get disconnected, this will remain in the communication with all of them near and forth, and the main microcontroller will be able to detect that the communication failure during the link, but the data will not be lost at any of the point. So always this mesh protocol is advantageous in case of the wireless communications. But right now there is a one issue with the wireless communications is still that the EMI interfaces, that due to the radio network uses, if it comes under the high voltage, or if it comes under the non-isolated areas, so the data will get corrupted. So that's what the problem that remains, but the work is still on for that isolation purpose also. And maybe in next 3-4 years you will see increasingly the BMS chips will, with the help of BMS chipsets with the feature of the wireless communications. Because right now the wireless chipsets, the radio been used are the generic network controllers, which don't have the good feature of the isolations. But in case of the BMSs, we require those chipsets which should have the isolations also. So this is the thing that is means that the research is going on in this, and in next 3 to 4 years we will see increasingly the numbers of this. So this is a one thing that you can look at later on. I'm not going to detail into it. And I was talking about the EMI immunity. So this is a one setup of our test setup that I'm showing to you over here. So here is your battery pack, and the BMS is here. So what happens that your battery pack, generally the BMS remains on the body of your battery pack itself, and it remains connected through the wires. But just for the testing of the EMI immunity, the EMCs, the RF immunity that we are testing. So here you can see that the wiring harnesses are passed through the RF interfaces, and we have this RF measurement over here. And still this this thing has not been deflected due to the, because what will happen that if the EMI, it is not EMI immune, if there is differences due to the RF interferences. So whatever the voltage measurements that we are doing for our cells, that will get corrupted actually. But due to the nature of the measurements of this LTC chips, that's the most advanced chips I can say for the analog devices, we don't have this differences into the EMI. And that's what the graph that you can see, that the errors that you can see, that 0.002% of the errors that we have observed over a different of the frequencies. So whenever you are selecting, so why I'm showing you that whenever you are selecting the BMS chipsets, the front-end chipsets for your battery pack measurements, so that has to be RF immune. The interfaces has to be RF immune. The shieldings you have to do proper. If it is the centralized architecture, then you don't have to worry much about it, because your BMS will be directly on your battery pack, But if it is a distributed architecture that you are doing, like for the four-wheeler applications or a public transport applications, so there it might be possible that the distance will be there between your battery pack and the BMS. And if there is a if there is a RF interferences, so that can lead to the drift into the measurements of your ADC. So that ADC must have to be RF immune, and the less of the errors it should have due to the RF couplings. Thereafter, related to the safety standards, so the BMS has to be functionally safe. It should follow the function, it should give the functional safety standards it should pass, and not only related to the user purposes, but also for your design purposes. So related, respective to the safety features and specific for the functional safeties, these are the requirements whenever you are going to get the certificates for your BMS. So these are the tests that will be done, designs. So for your detections of the leakage of the currents, the open wire conditions, thereafter the shell measurements, how much accuracy that you have, the whether your battery pack is getting over voltage detected or not, the communication redundancy, and if the communication is failed, so getting detected or not. So all these are the functional safety standards that is expected from your battery packs, the BMS front-end chip actually, and you have to take care of these things related to the, and this comes under the ASIL standard, the ASIL-D standards. The second part of your safety is the security. So as I was talking about, the batteries are getting now the data points, the more and more of the data your battery packs are being gathered through the BMS itself. And secondly, you want to control your battery packs also through the BMS. So whenever we are going to design the battery modules with the help of the BMSs, there are the increasing security aspects of it. There are the security threats for it actually, and for that purpose, the like the fire conditions or hazard conditions can occur. So it is the a cell's quality that is important of, but also it is the BMS designs that is, because if one has taken control of your BMS, he can play anything with your a battery pack and can lead it to the fiery or the hazardous conditions. So, and secondly, the battery swapping network. So in place of the public chargings, the battery swapping networks are also become increasingly popular. So there also this safe security of your BMS is important of, so that your battery pack should be connected with your vendor swapping station. So what the thing is that the BMS doesn't remain only the protection circuit or just a management circuit, but it has transformed into a data providers also. And that data provision is not happening through the wired mode, but also through the cloud communicated mode. So your battery pack becomes cloud communicated with the help of the BMS available. So whenever we have to do such kind of a designs where you want the on the fly, when you want the data from your battery packs on the fly through the means of the cloud communication, so the BMS should have these features, the secure boot features. Thereafter, the firmware updates. So secure boot means whenever the BMS boots, when the power comes to the BMS, so the certificates should be there for your BMS with the communication of your cloud. The firmware updating, the remote firmware updating, if we are doing for our BMS, so the proper of the key exchange should happen first, and then only from the respective endpoint only the firmware update should be happening. So these things, I have given you the link for the IoT security masterclass. There the different of the sessions have been conducted on all these things. You can go through the recordings for each of them to understand that what is a secure boot, what is a secure firmware update, how do we do the cryptography sessions, how do we establish the cryptography sessions, and latest that we have the crypto element. So we have the hardware available through which we do the key exchange, we store the keys, and we do the key exchange for the secured communication with the cloud. So these are the provisions that we require in the BMS also. All the aspects of the I2 security is implemented in your BMS. So those things are there. And then one important thing is, which is getting now increasingly popular, is X509 certifications. So this is respective to your keys, and the BMS chipsets should be X.509 certified for the IoT security purpose also. So if it is a cloud connected BMS front-end chip that you are using, or any radio which you are using with your BMS, that should be X.509 certified. That's from the manufacturer side itself. Here is a product that is TA100. That's a product from Microchip. So this is a product that has been used for the BMS security purpose. So this is just a kind of a hardware jack, and that has the feature of the storing the keys, and that has the crypto element into it. And through this, you can provide the BMS security. So whenever we are doing the BMS security, so actually we are authenticating the BMS, and through the BMS we are doing the authentication of the battery pack. So this authentication is done in the three-way. First, it is the in the vehicle which you are installing the battery pack. That battery pack should be authenticated with the vehicle. So battery to vehicle authentication, that's the one thing is battery to vehicle. Thereafter, the battery to the charging network. So if you are connecting the battery to the public chargers, so it should be authenticated that this battery will be charged to this public charger or not. If it is a swapping station, so battery to the swapping station authentication, that's what is a required one. And if it is the data that you are gathering, so battery to the cloud network, so where the data is getting stored. So all these four places, the authentications are required from the battery pack, and this authentication is happening through the BMS. So this TA, which TA100 I have talked about. So with one solution that we can provide for this BMS. So with each of the BMS, we can attach this TA100, and then the communication will be there, and we can provide a level of a safety for the security for the authentication of our battery packs. And the X.509, that's a trust anchor. So that is a trust platform of Microchip is there, through which this certificate signing is happening for the X.509. So this is done for the private key and public key pairs. So your OEM, your BMS front chip OEM is providing the root certificates, which is the root certificate for your BMS front end. Thereafter, the manufacturer certificate. So this root certificate will be separate for each of the BMS front end chip. So for each of the chipset, this BMS front end chipset, the root certificate will be separate. The manufacturer certificate will be common one, who will be manufacturing it, and both of them get signed by this X.509 certification. And then the product certification it becomes. So this product certification becomes a pair of the PP, that public key and private key, and then then a complete X.509 certified chipset will be ready. Now what happens that you are a manufacturer of a battery pack, and you want the certified BMS chipsets to be implemented on your battery packs. So you give the purchase order to Microchip. You give your own certification so that you can do the authentications of your battery packs with your vehicle or the charging network or the swapping network. So you do the authentication. So you give your own certificates. So on top of that product certifications, your certificate is being added, and then a complete of a chipset is being produced. So this is how the chain of trust is designed for the secured chipsets for the BMS front end. And this is a one example which I have given you. This is the latest from the microchip, which has been in the market. Other semiconductor companies are also trying to do something like this. And then a completely cloud communicated BMS front chips will remain available to you for the purpose of BMS design, which will be doing the protections and the communication as well. So these are the security aspects that is in the pipeline, and the productions are on for this purpose. So whenever we are going to design the battery packs for this, so what are the things that we are looking at for the from the BMS is that the dynamic balancings of the current, and that pack current could be from 1 milliampere to thousands of amperes of a range. The pack voltage could be your from the 36 volt or even 12 volts limit to 1 kilovolts of a range if it is a grid connected. The isolation that you have to provide in your BMS and the leakage that you can detect of. Thereafter, the cell balancing that you require, the temperature sensings that you require, and for the doing the pack for doing the temperature after doing the temperature measurements, you have to do the thermal managements of your pack. So that could be up to the 50%, dependent on the what quality or what type of the battery packs that you are making. But that cost might go up to 50% of your pack cost for the thermal managements. So this is a one reference design. So as I have told you that we are providing the consultancies also. So we are having the BMS products also for the designs. So this is a one reference design I'm sharing with you. So for this is for a 48 volt reference design. So what it does that it is based on the analog devices chipset, and this is the most accurate one, that 1% of the accuracy that it has. It has the temperature sensors, ISO SPI that we have, and for the communication with the microcontrollers, we have the microcontroller headers is there, and it is based on a SAM microcontroller. And the battery packs is there on the side for the BMS front end chipset side, and it has the measurements for all the VCV voltage, current, temperatures. It has the protection circuitries, the cell balancing. It has the interface to the microcontroller is through the SPI protocol itself. It has this is a field programmable BMS. So EEPROM interfaces are there to store the logs of the accidental cases, and this thing also, the field parameters, like if you want to change dynamically the parameters of your BMS, so you can change it. So because it is a field programmable BMS, so we are having the facility for the on the fly changing of the parameters related to the voltage and the current also. If you want to do the standalone evaluation for your BMS, like the things which I have talked to you want to evaluate it, so there are the evaluation boards are available for this purpose, and we are having the complete offer solutions for it. So just you can find similar things based on these things. And this was it related to the session today. If you are having the queries, so you can always be in contact with us. Our emails and the numbers are with you. Just before I'm ending the session, there is one more announcement that I have to do. So if you are interested to know for this thing, yeah. So many of people were asking about the new batches for the BMS program. So the new batch for the BMS programs have also been launched now, as I have told you that we are in. So new batches for the BMS programs have been launched. So if you are interested, so it is going to start in the month of October. So here I have provided you the link for the BMS program, and this is a 6-month program. It is where you will be knowing the details of the designs of the BMS, how you can design the BMS from the scratch, and for the lithium ions for the different of the architecture. So that program is going to be launched in the month of October. Next month it is. Pre-booking is going on. So if you are interested, you can leave your contact details through this link, and we will be contacting you for the once the program is getting started for the launch program. So that was it for the session today. If you have liked the session, so here I'm giving you a link for the review. So I just request you to give your review here. So I have pasted the link in the chat window. Now I would like to have your questions. So if you have the questions, you are welcome to put your questions.